Alhamdulillah. Sometimes guidance comes quietly, not with noise, not with force, but with a gentle touch that reaches a heart that has been waiting for decades. Dusk descended slowly over an old monastery on the slopes of the Salatiga Mountains. The air was cool, almost sacred. Tall pine trees stood still, while dry needles fell softly to the ground, as if nature itself was bowing in silence. Time felt heavy there, yet peaceful, carrying memories of prayers whispered for generations. Behind a stained glass window, inside a modest stone room, an elderly woman sat cross-legged on the floor. She wore a simple white robe. A gray veil rested gently over her head. A rosary hung quietly around her neck, resting against her chest. Her name was Sister Maria Benedicta. For more than 40 years, she had lived within the walls of the convent. She was 60 years old now. Her hands were wrinkled. Her hair had long begun to turn white. Yet her eyes still carried a deep light, a mix of devotion and a loneliness she had never allowed herself to name. Inside the convent, Sister Benedicta was known as a legend. She was the keeper of silence, the guide of prayer, the woman younger nuns looked up to with reverence. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried weight. Everyone believed she was complete, fulfilled, and at peace. But only she knew the truth. She had never married. She had never known the warmth of being loved by a man. She had never experienced companionship beyond duty and discipline. Her life had been shaped by sacrifice, obedience, and restraint. She told herself that this was holiness. She believed that longing was something to be buried. Yet deep inside, there was a quiet ache. Not rebellion, not regret, just an unanswered question she carried into every prayer. Everything began to change when the monastery organized an interfaith social service program in a small village at the foot of Mount Merbabu. It was meant to be simple, helping the poor, distributing food, offering medical aid. Nothing more. That was where she met him. His name was Gibran Fauzi. He was 30 years old, a Muslim man who had graduated from an Islamic boarding school in Purworejo. Now, he devoted his life to serving remote villages as a health volunteer and a teacher of the Quran. He was tall, with a gentle face and calm, thoughtful eyes. When he first greeted Sister Benedicta, he bowed respectfully and spoke softly. "May God accompany your steps, sister, and may his love bring peace to your heart." The words were simple, yet they passed through her like a warm breeze through a closed room. There was no arrogance in him, no suspicion, no judgment, only sincerity. She was surprised. She had never imagined that a young Muslim man could carry such quiet courtesy. Their paths crossed again and again. Gibran helped carry sacks of rice to the monastery. He repaired leaking roof tiles. He worked in the garden, planting flowers under the afternoon sun. Sometimes he would simply sit nearby, respecting her silence. Slowly, they began to talk. They spoke about nature, about suffering, about humanity, and eventually about God. One evening, as they sat on the monastery veranda, watching the sky darken, Sister Benedicta asked quietly, "Gibran, why do you seem so calm in your worship?" He smiled gently and placed his hand over his chest. "Because God is not far away, sister," he said. "He is closer than our own breath, closer than the vein in our neck." She said nothing, but her heart stirred. Warmth spread through her chest, unfamiliar and frightening. Something was awakening inside her, something she believed had died long ago. That night, Sister Benedicta stood for a long time in front of the mirror in her small room. She saw her aging face, her thinning hair, her fragile body. Yet her heart was beating fast, like that of a young girl. "This is impossible," she whispered to herself. But Gibran's name lingered on her lips, in her thoughts, in her prayers, even in her dreams. She tried to push it away. She tried to return to routine. But something had already changed. Not because of desire alone, but because, for the first time in her life, her heart felt seen. And she did not yet know that this quiet meeting was only the beginning of a journey that would shake her faith, her past, and the world around her. Days passed, but the quiet distance between Sister Maria Benedicta and Gibran Fauzi slowly disappeared. They did not rush. They did not cross lines. Yet something unseen was growing, something neither of them dared to name. Gibran continued his service at the monastery with the same humility. He carried vegetables from the village. He fixed broken faucets. He cleaned the garden paths without being asked. His presence was steady, respectful, and gentle. Sister Benedicta found herself waiting for the moments when their paths crossed. She would pretend to be busy in the garden only to feel her heart soften when she heard his footsteps. She did not understand what was happening to her. All she knew was that silence felt different now. One afternoon, heavy rain fell suddenly. The mountain air turned cold. Sister Benedicta had been walking back from the village when the path became slippery and unsafe. She stopped under a tree, unsure of what to do. Moments later, Gibran appeared, holding a small umbrella. "Sister, please," he said softly, "let me walk you back." Under the narrow umbrella, rain poured around them. Their shoulders almost touched. Neither spoke, yet the silence felt full, not empty. Gibran finally broke it. "Sister," he said, his voice steady but sincere, "the world gives us different ages, different paths, and different faiths. But sometimes light recognizes light." She stopped walking. Her hands trembled. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I see a light in you," he continued gently. "A light that comes from patience, sacrifice, and sincerity. I respect you deeply." She could not respond. She only nodded, tears falling freely as the rain hid them. That night, Sister Benedicta could not sleep. She sat alone in her dim room, holding her rosary tightly. Her hands shook, her chest felt heavy, yet strangely calm. For the first time in her life, she lowered herself to the floor, not in habit, but in surrender. She did not speak formal prayers. She only whispered from the depth of her soul, "O God, if you truly exist beyond walls and rituals, guide me to your light." Her lips hesitated. Then softly, unfamiliar yet comforting, a new word escaped her breath. "Allah." She was surprised by the peace that followed. It was not fear. It was not confusion. It was calm. But peace rarely comes without trials. The next morning, the atmosphere in the convent changed. Sister Petronella, her longtime friend, entered her room unexpectedly. Her face turned pale when she saw a translated copy of the Quran resting beside the bed. "Benedicta," she whispered, her voice shaking. "What does this mean?" Sister Benedicta smiled faintly. She did not deny it. She did not defend herself. "I am searching," she replied quietly. From that day on, whispers followed her footsteps. Some sisters avoided her. Others watched her with suspicion. The warmth she had known for decades began to fade. Yet Gibran remained the same. He greeted her respectfully. He offered help without asking questions. He did not pressure her. He did not invite her to Islam with words. One afternoon, she finally asked him. "Gibran," she said, her voice trembling, "why are you so patient, even when people look at you with hostility?" He smiled softly. "Because truth does not need anger to defend it," he replied. "It simply exists, and light will find its way." Her heart shook. Later, in a quiet corner of the garden, she asked the question she had been afraid to ask. "If I leave my faith, will God abandon me?" Gibran looked at her deeply, not as a preacher, but as a servant of God. "God is not owned by any institution," he said gently. "Even Mary submitted to God's command. Even Jesus prostrated himself in obedience. They were not worshipped. They worshipped." Her body trembled. Tears streamed down her face. That night, under a sky full of stars, Sister Maria Benedicta made a decision that would change everything. She wrote a letter of resignation from the monastery. She did not explain. She did not accuse. She only wrote, "I wish to seek God in a closer and truer way. Please pray for me." She folded the letter with shaking hands. Her heart was not breaking. It was awakening. And she did not yet know that the path she had chosen would soon lead her to a miracle no one could have imagined. A few weeks later, in a small village at the foot of Mount Sumbing, a quiet transformation took place. The morning air was soft. Mist still clung to the fields. Birds moved gently between trees, as if nature itself was watching something sacred unfold. An elderly woman stood among a small gathering of witnesses. She wore a simple white headscarf. Her face was calm, yet radiant in a way it had never been before. With a steady voice, she recited words that reshaped her soul. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." Tears flowed freely down her cheeks. Sister Maria Benedicta was no more. From that moment on, she became Mariam Nur Fadila. She embraced Gibran gently, not as a lover consumed by emotion, but as a woman who had finally found her way home. "If you sincerely accept me," she said softly, "I want to spend the rest of my life as your wife, not only for love in this world, but because you have guided me toward the hereafter." Gibran lowered his head, kissed her hand, and replied with humility, "You are not just the woman I love. You are proof that Allah's guidance knows no age." Their marriage was simple, no luxury, no excess, just sincerity. Religious teachers attended. Village elders offered their blessings. Even a few former nuns came quietly, standing at a distance, their eyes filled with questions they were not yet ready to ask. But peace did not last long. News spread faster than anyone expected. A 60-year-old former nun had embraced Islam. She married a young man who had studied at an Islamic boarding school. The story exploded across social media. Debate followed. Accusations rose, mockery and outrage mixed together. But nothing prepared the world for what came next. 3 months after the marriage, Mariam's body began to feel different. She grew tired easily. Nausea came in waves. Her chest felt heavy. Gibran assumed it was her age, but Mariam felt something deeper, an instinct she had never known before quietly awakened. They visited the village midwife. At first, the examination was routine. Then, the midwife's expression changed. "Mrs. Mariam," she said carefully, "I know this sounds impossible, but you are pregnant." Silence filled the room. Mariam stared at the ultrasound screen. A small pulsing light flickered there. "That is a child," she whispered. Gibran could not speak. He dropped to the floor and prostrated himself, holding back tears. A former nun, 60 years old, pregnant. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed. Opinions clashed. Some called it a biological miracle. Others called it a lie. Some accused manipulation. Others claimed sin and disgrace. The church issued a statement, expressing loss and concern. Anti-Islam voices accused Gibran of deception. They said the child could not be his. They said it was impossible. Doctors later confirmed the truth. A rare phenomenon. Spontaneous post-menopausal ovulation. Extremely uncommon, but medically possible. For Maryam, the explanation was simple. This was not just biology. This was an answer to prayer. At night, Gibran prepared honey, milk, and dates for her. He massaged her feet gently, reciting the prayer of Prophet Zachariah. My Lord, grant me from yourself righteous offspring. Indeed, you are the hearer of supplication. Despite the noise of the world, their home was peaceful. Maryam often sat with a Quran on her lap, reading verses that once felt foreign, now more familiar than anything she had known before. But pressure continued. Media arrived. Religious figures demanded explanations. An archbishop even came to urge Maryam to return, accusing Gibran of indoctrination. Maryam stood firm. I was not misled, she said calmly. I was saved from a thirst for faith that I had hidden behind a holy uniform. Allah gave me love, and He gave me this child. When the night of labor came, fear and faith met face to face. Maryam's body was weak. The pain was intense. If I am not strong enough, she whispered to Gibran, take care of our child. Gibran held her hand tightly. We are strong together, he replied. Allah will not abandon what He has entrusted. Hours passed. Prayers filled the room. Then, a cry broke through the night. Strong, clear, alive. A baby girl was born. Gibran immediately prostrated himself, his voice trembling as he praised Allah. Maryam held the child close, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Her name is Nur Ayas, she whispered. May she grow in light and bring light to hearts that are lost, as I once was. And in that moment, from an old womb the world had called impossible, Allah brought forth a new life. The days after the birth of little Nur Ayas felt unreal, as if time itself had slowed down to witness a miracle. Inside the simple house, at the foot of Mount Sumbing, warmth filled every corner. Maryam Nur Fadila sat quietly each morning, holding her newborn daughter close to her chest. Her face showed the marks of age, yet her eyes shone brighter than ever before. For the first time in her life, she felt complete. Nur Ayas grew quickly. She was a calm baby, rarely crying, as if she had arrived carrying peace with her. Whenever Maryam recited verses of the Quran, the child would fall asleep instantly, her tiny fingers gripping her mother's robe. People began to come, journalists, interfaith activists, curious neighbors, even religious leaders who once criticized her choices. Some came with questions, others came with judgment, but many left with tears in their eyes. They saw Maryam's serenity. They saw Gibran's humility. And they saw a child born not from scandal, but from faith and patience. Slowly, something unexpected happened. Non-Muslim neighbors began asking questions about Islam. Some asked to listen to Quran recitation. Others asked about prayer. One of them said quietly, "If faith can bring a woman this much peace at the end of her life, then I want to understand it." Maryam never preached with words. She never argued. She simply lived. Years passed. Nur Ayas grew into a gentle, intelligent child. By the age of 6, she woke up before dawn, sitting on her father's lap, learning verse after verse of the Quran. Her pronunciation was clear. Her memory was sharp. Her heart seemed filled with light from a source beyond this world. The small house became known as Ruma Nur, a place of warmth, remembrance, and quiet guidance. One evening, as the sky turned red and birds returned to their nests, Mariam sat on a bamboo swing on the porch. Nur Ayas slept peacefully on her lap, a small Quran resting on her chest. Gibran stood beside them, gently touching Mariam's white hair. "If I had remained where I was," Mariam whispered, "I would have died in emptiness. Allah sent you not only as a husband, but as a guide home." Gibran smiled softly. "And you," he replied, "have given the world a story that teaches without words." When Nur Ayas was a little older, they were invited to a large Islamic boarding school in West Java. The child was asked to recite Quran at a special gathering. Thousands attended. Among them were scholars, community leaders, and even church representatives who remembered the story from years ago. When Nur Ayas stepped onto the stage, silence filled the hall. She opened the mushaf and recited softly, "Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth." Tears fell openly. Even a priest, who had once spoken harshly about Mariam, stood quietly at the back, sobbing. After the event, he approached her. "I once called you lost," he said, "but through your child's voice, I felt God visit my heart." Mariam embraced him gently. "There is nothing to forgive," she replied. "Guidance belongs only to God. I was once lost too." In the years that followed, many places of worship became spaces for dialogue. Many hearts softened. Many searched in silence. Mariam never sought fame. She lived simply. Her only wish was to raise her daughter as a light in a darkening world. At the age of 70, Mariam grew weak. One night, she sat on her wooden bed, her breathing slow. Nur Ayas, now 10 years old, sat beside her, having memorized the entire Quran. "My child," Mariam said softly, "when I am gone, do not cry for me. Send prayers. Continue reciting the words that saved your mother." Nur Ayas kissed her hand, tears falling freely. That night, Mariam returned to Allah in a state of prostration. A peaceful smile remained on her face. Her hand held her daughter's small mushaf. At dawn, the call to prayer echoed through the village. The world heard the news once more. A former nun passed away in prostration. Her daughter continues her mission of light. And the story lives on. A reminder that guidance knows no age. That mercy transcends the past. And that from a womb the world once called impossible, Allah can bring forth a light for generations to come. Because true love does not end at the cross of despair, and true guidance begins in sincere surrender.